Last month, the Incheon International Airport Corporation announced that it was going to give full employment status to 1,900 security agents who have been working on temporary contracts. This was part of the airport's drive and the government's to reduce the number of temporary or non-regular workers. But after a fake news story went viral about an airport employee bragging that he'd been given full-time employment status with a 50% pay bump, there was intense backlash, especially from younger job seekers. Now, the airport labour union has also waded in, saying this decision could negatively affect its existing full-time or regular staff. And they have even called for the airport CEO to be ousted. To explore this further, we have joining us in the studio two special guests today. First, we have Dr. Choi Ji-eun, the international spokesperson for the ruling Democratic Party and who is also previously a senior economist at the World Bank. Thank you for being here today, Dr. Choi.
Thank you for inviting me.
We also have with us Lee Jun-seok, a former executive vice representative of the main opposition United Future Party. It's good to have you back on the show as well, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
So before we get into the main discussion, I think it's important that we first clarify the employment structure in Korea. Today we are largely talking about how employment is divided into two groups. Earlier I said temporary and full-time employment status, but if we translate from the Korean, we have regular and non-regular workers. Dr. Choi, can you explain for us what these two terms mean here in Korea and why it's been viewed as a cause for concern?
Yeah. First of all, let me explain by the employment trend globally. So labor market duality or labor market polarization has been observed in a number of countries, not only in Korea, but also in many other countries. And this situation has been linked to globalization of labor markets and also technological changes, like especially the middle-skilled jobs can be more easily automated or outsourced, and their wage has been reduced. That caused the polarization of the labor market. However, the distinct characteristic of the Korean labor market, as you said, was the large share of the non-regular workers in total employment, which ranges from 23 to 50% in total employment, and also the ranges varies significantly depending on its definition, which is much larger than OECD average, which is 11%. So the non-regular workers in Korea tend to receive lower wages and also are less likely to enjoy social benefits. And the employment crisis caused by the COVID-19 outbreak hit the non-regular worker the hardest. So the gap between the non-regular and regular workers has been widened. So on a macro level, it has likely contributed to increasing inequality and even low fertility rate as women and the youth account for disproportionately large shares of non-regular employment.
Mr. Lee, this issue of regular and non-regular workers has been identified as a concern in Korean society for many years now. Do you think it is something that needs to be addressed as well?
Definitely. The first point I want to make here is that if you want to simplify the matter, it's about stability and wage level. So the regular workers, they have stability and they have higher wage levels, and the non-regular workers, they have lower wage level, and they don't have stability. But I'm going to use this term a lot: fairness. Yeah, fairness is the matter here, and I think the gap to alleviate the gap between the two two types of work. I think politicians have made a lot of efforts to narrow the gap. But the thing here is that the economic crisis Dr. Choi just mentioned is making it harder to make the transition from non-regular workers to regular workers on time. So Moon Jae-in administration, after its inauguration in 2017, has set this as the first objective of the administration. And President Moon had to visit Incheon Airport Corporation on the third day of inauguration.
Right. 3 days after he came into power, one of the first places he goes to is the Incheon International Airport, and that pretty much makes a statement that this is going to be an important issue for his presidency. Right,
so nobody here denies the fact that making the transition from non-regular workers to regular workers is important, and it's from good intention. But people have to point out that it's really important to keep fairness in the process. Say, they chose 1,900 workers from a total population of 5 million people to be the first model case.
Okay,
and
so let's talk about this now. So we're talking about the Incheon International Airport, 1,900 workers, you said,
Right.
mostly security agents, I understand. They are set to have their contracts changed from temporary to permanent. Most of these staff, though, have been working at the airport for many years, have extensive experience, but have not had access to benefits that full-time workers at a public corporation might have enjoyed. So, Mr. Lee, why has there been a backlash then, especially among younger job seekers?
So among the Korean public corporations, there's a specific rule saying that a corporation's aggregate sum of wages have to come to some ceiling. So without modification to that law, all corporations have to abide by a specific wage ceiling.
Okay.
So when you make a transition from non-regular workers to regular workers, at this volume, 1,900 people, it definitely makes the Incheon Corporation hit the ceiling. That means that the regular workers who had been working there has to face some difficulties in terms of their wage levels and their other social benefits. So that's one backlash coming from there, from the regular workers, but the present regular workers. And because of the wage ceiling, like the new employee numbers will have to decrease for a while. So that is a thing for people preparing for the job at Incheon International Airport Corporation. So, I mean, those two are the big groups, two groups who are actually concerned about this abrupt transition of 1,900 people.
Before we carry on, could I ask, I guess, not to tap the hands on the table, because this
Oh,
table
sure,
is very sensitive. I'm really sorry about this.
Right.
The table is very sensitive and then comes up to the mics. Okay, so Dr. Che, what do you make of that argument that there is a ceiling, of wage ceiling, that Incheon International Airport Corporation has, that by making these non-regular workers into regular workers, it perhaps fills that quota and therefore there could be less space for new job seekers? I believe the Incheon International Airport has already refuted that.
Yeah, I watched in TV that the Blue House, the workers or staffer were mentioning that it is actually not the case, and we are not reducing the number of new employment in addition to this contract conversion from the non-regular worker to regular workers. So I don't think it is actually the case. And also, in my view, the deep root problem of why the youth were so upset about this situation are probably two reasons. First, as Mr. Lee mentioned, they probably suspect the fairness of the hiring process, which could be also path dependent, as they probably have experienced unfair hiring process previously elsewhere, so that might have been caused. But second is which is, in my view, is much more fundamental, is very extreme difficulty for them to find a good job. And it's the lack of good job in Korean labor market, which the youth suffer the most right now. So they were just fed up looking for a job, and they were looking for a good job, but it was so difficult for them to find. So I think the anger of the youth were really the deep causes about the Korean labor market problem, and also like the lack of good job.
So that's their frustration, but they're also saying it's unfair. They're saying that these non-regular staff who are being transferred to regular staff, they skip the rigorous hiring process that first-time job seekers at the airport would have to go through. Is that perhaps they are inflating the situation too much, do you think? I
think there are some misunderstanding about that because let's look at the background of the reasons why this airport corporation decided to convert the non-regular position to regular positions. As Mr. Lee mentioned, during the campaign, the President Moon promised such employment contract conversion in order to address the labor market duality. And citizens voted for him, right? That's what he promised. And then the citizens, including many non-regular workers, strongly demand such conversion. For instance, last July, non-regular workers across the nation went on strike asking for a conversion for all non-regular public sector worker contract to regular ones. And the government is in the process of responding such a demand by converting the employment status for all workers in public sector, including Incheon Airport. So Incheon Airport is more symbolic because it has so many non-regular workers. But the plan, what government promised, is converting all non-regular worker in public sector, and we are in the process of doing that.
Well, the thing here is that most of the other public corporations who made the transition had kept some of the segregation between the two types of workers. Say, most of the corporations requested to the consulting firms and asked them which is the better type of transition that we have to make. And they paid them a lot of money. I heard the numbers and saying it was about 8 billion won or something like that. And the consulting firms came up with an idea saying that you are going to have to set up a subsidiary company to your corporation and then make them regular workers of the subsidiary companies. That was one solution given by the consulting firms, and the government and the public corporations paid for that result. And well, even in Incheon Airport, the labor union and the corporation came up with an agreement saying that they're going to make that type of transition, saying set up a subsidiary company and send the workers to that company and make them regular workers of that company. But well, for some reason, without any notice, the corporation made the decision to hire the 1900 security agent directly from the Incheon International Corporation. So, I mean, there were a lot of explanations had to be made for the public to understand the situation here, but they skipped all those kind of steps, and I think that's one of the reasons why the younger generations are quite upset about it. And here I would say that, I mean, Incheon International Airport Corporation is like the dream company for most of the young people here in Korea, because
there was a survey recently that said for younger people, younger job seekers, their number one choice for public corporation for them to get a job at was Incheon International Airport.
Well, Dr. Choi mentioned it as a symbol, so it's a symbol for all the transitions that are going to be made in the future. So they expect it to be really fair as a model case, but it didn't have that kind of characteristic in the transition.
Dr. Chair, Mr. Lee is saying there's a lack of communication, lack of transparency, should we say, in how this decision was made.
Let me add a little more, say that if the transition was made based on, I mean, the selection process was based on a job category, say security agents had to be hired directly. If that was the philosophy they had there, I mean, is KBS any less important than Incheon International Airport? Say security agents here at KBS are hired by a subsidiary company. So is this transition is there any reason for this transition to be neglected out of this whole process? I mean, what is the philosophy there, and what is the scientific selection method that you use there?
So, Dr. Chair, is that a fair comparison, Incheon Airport and KBS? And secondly, I mean, with what Mr. Lee is saying, what's your general response to that?
Well, I think there are some miscommunication or misunderstanding what government was intend to do or is intend to do right now, and what people understand. I think there's some information asymmetry. For instance, what I just read in the newspaper and the information I got was that they are going to have open competition for the people that hired since 2017. So, which I don't know why that is unfair process. And also, you mentioned about having the subsidiary companies as a solution, but a lot of literature on Korean labor market actually think that this third-party hiring and indirect hiring through the agent were the problem of this the labor market duality. So that is actually not the solution of this labor market duality, which is the fundamental problem of this issue. So in my view, instead of looking at the tree, we should look at the bush. And instead of having an exhausting political debate, we should actually discuss about what are the root cause of this problem and how we are going to address it. And we probably have to discuss about alternative policy options based on those understanding, and maybe try to put the legislative efforts to substantially reduce the gap between the regular and non-regular workers.
Dr. Che, I want to get your thoughts on one more thing before we move on, because it's not just young job seekers, but the existing regular workers at the airport are also opposing this move. Today, the airport labour union has called on the CEO to resign. They argue that this change could negatively affect their workers, as it could limit opportunities and lower wage growth targets by management due to increased overhead costs. This is basically the wage ceiling that Mr. Lee mentioned as well. What do you make of those concerns?
Well, I think any reform is very hard, but especially any changes in labor market is extremely hard, not only in Korea but also elsewhere. So I think the full discussion and then a democratic process is absolutely necessary. And then this kind of public debate or the workers explaining their concern about CEO is a very important part of this process. People build their consensus about the final solution. So I think it's just a good process in a way. But at the same time, I think the real focus of the both parties should discuss is how to reduce the gap between regular and non-regular workers, and how to, and more fundamentally, how to increase the good jobs in Korean labor market.
Well, to some extent, I want to ask you if, this kind of transition is already happened in Korea Expressway Corporation 2 years ago, I think, and that was there was a dispute between the fare collecting workers and the corporation, and they had this long lawsuit, and then they came up with the solution saying that the corporation is going to directly hire the
These
fare
are
collectors.
the toll booth workers who collect the money, right?
Right, but well, you might want to go and find out where they are working right now. The fare collecting workers, the toll booth workers, they are. I read in a newspaper article saying that one of the workers told the newspaper saying that she lives in Gyeonggi-do, and the corporation had to send her to Gangwon-do to do some toilet cleaning work. So that is because I mean, I'm not sure if this transition is even compatible with the upcoming technological advancements within the corporations, because I read in an article saying 2019 saying that the airport corporation was advertising its new X-ray system to adopt AI systems, so they're going to need less workers in the security process, and saying that they now have to hire more workers because of the government policy. This is not compatible with what they had in their vision. So, this kind of intrusion into the specific corporations, I think it's going to be a real hardship for them.
Okay, then for critics like yourself on this decision, Mr. Lee, I understand you see the international Incheon Airport as a microcosm of the wider concerns with the situation and concerning the Moon administration on the handling of this issue. You might agree that we need to reduce the number of non-regular workers, but it's the way of simply transferring non-regular to regular workers that you're finding problematic. Then do you or the UFP have some sort of alternate solution to this right now?
Well, we think that the solution gave out by the consulting firm, say, build a subsidiary company, I would say that you would say it's another form of duality, but still, it's a middle ground solution for this debate here, saying that, regular workers in subsidiary companies, they get stability. As long as the airport is there, the subsidiary company is going to be there. So stability is not an issue for them. But they're gonna come to a middle ground, say accept the lower wage levels and social benefits, but they can enjoy the stability here.
Dr. Che, is that a viable middle ground? How is the ruling party and the government trying to overhaul the system right now then?
Well, I think when you're discussing about technical, economic or policy options, we need to have some data and evidence instead of just debating very exhaustively about the political reasons. So first of all, the focus of this really debate is about the problem of the labor market duality and lack of a good job or lack of job for the youth. And then if we say the future of the Incheon Airport is hiring AI or machine, then how are we going to create jobs? I understand that the technological change, one hand reducing the number of jobs, especially for the youth. So what are the solutions? And also the truth is that in Korea, the labor market duality has increased significantly while the current opposition party was the ruling party. The first wave of polarization took place during the 1997 Asian financial crisis. mostly because of the external issue. But the second wave of rapid polarization took place from 2009 to 2016 as employment share moved from medium to low wage occupation. That's the fact. So the wage gap between different groups has been increased, particularly during this period. So what are we going to do about this? You mentioned that a different legislative effort the government can do, but if we look back, 20th National Assembly, not only for the current ruling party, but also opposition party, has been they neglected the gap between regular and non-regular workers because there are several good bills were proposed by different MPs, but in fact, those legislations were proposed to reduce such a gap were not discussed and ended up being expired. So I hope the 21st National Assembly should approve these existing legislation first, and also additionally. Yes.
We are running out of time. I feel like I should give you 30 seconds just to reply.
So it's another form of fairness here coming up, saying like the workers at McDonald's, they get fired for because of kiosks. I mean, what privileges do they have to give to international airport workers so that they don't get fired even after adoption of new systems, say AI and those kind of stuff? I mean, why do they have to be kept in their asylum? I mean.
So what's your solution? Like to improve affairs?
Why the Moon Jae-in government wants to make this as a model for the private sector also, but how this is a model? Say, keep unnecessary jobs.
Unfortunately, as this debate is heating up, we have to end it there. We've run out of time. But,
I have not said my key points, so if you give me just 10 seconds.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should solve this problem as both supply and labor side of supply and demand side of a labor market issue. And for supply side, I proposed the fair pay instead of the equal pay for equal labor, which meaning the regular non-regular workers should be paid even higher, and all sorts of other improving their bargaining power. But on the demand side, due to the lack of time constraint, I propose you read my SNS.
Okay, well, I know you said that there should be action rather than debate right now, but debate, I think we can clearly see that it's going to rumble on for a while. We'll have to leave it there. We've been speaking to Dr. Choi Ji-eun, the international spokesperson for the ruling Democratic Party, and Lee Jun-seok, a former executive vice representative of the main opposition United Future Party. Thank you both for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.